Welcome to Jazz Zone Together. We're proud to be joined by Jim Culbertson, an outstanding teacher, musician, and music educator. We look forward to hearing from Jim on all the successes he has had and continues to have in his career. Now, I'll bring in Dick Dunscomb to conduct the interview with Jim. Dick, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Well, Jim, welcome to Jazz Zone Together. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well.
You know, I'm going to say something to begin this interview about who our loyal lookers are, and it's a lot of music educators that are looking for help in the jazz area and beyond. But I want to say to them, you better watch this interview because you're going to learn how this man built a fantastic high school program. So, Jim, let's start by talking about the growing up period of your life and your focus on music and ultimately the career in music. So take us up to the time when you go to college.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have my parents were married during World War II, and my dad was in the Navy, and they were stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and they had the great fortune of listening and dancing to all the big bands touring during that time, and it was on a very regular basis. And that love that they had at that time, they brought that back into our home when I was growing up, and I listened to that music as well all through my upbringing. And I remember one of the records that my dad bought was one of Doc Severinsen early on in his career. It was the Command records, and he purchased that. And I tell you what, I listened over and over and over. And needless to say, when I came time in the fifth grade for me to join band, guess what I chose? Trumpet. And I had a really great band director when I first started, Mr. Metzger, and he saw talent and encouraged me to take private lessons. And my parents said, okay. And I was really fortunate to have Ural Hoffman, a great fine trumpet player in the Springfield area. And I joined him in his studio, and he taught me how to play. Almost all of my time with him was all about legit playing and learning all the great solos that were out there, and just how to play properly the trumpet. And I took lessons from him for probably 6, 7 years or so. Never anything about jazz, but that was not in the equation. But it was all about legit playing, and I learned how to do that, and we became pretty good friends. And lo and behold, after my ninth grade year of junior high school, going into high school, Ural was a member of the Springfield Municipal Band. He gave me his chair. He retired from there, and I was sitting next to first chair solo trumpet player Horace Sweet, who was an old school vaudeville trumpeter. And he was greatly influenced me in regard to how to play lead in a concert band. And of course, his sense of humor was just ridiculous and second to none. But he always set me at ease and gave me great confidence, especially considering my age. And of course, there was a little jealousy in the sections because I was playing first parts next to the legendary Horace Sweet, and I was only in ninth grade. So that was a point of interest and tough for me. But it all worked out. I played in the band for another 6 years, and I learned the skill of sight reading and understanding music during that time. You know, we were playing 5 nights a week and going through all the old school marches, etc. So the gift from that band of me being able to play 5 nights a week during the summertime was just fantastic. Taught me how to read music. I went on to Springfield High School and was there for 3 years. And I was played in the band, and I also played in the stage band. And along with my journey of learning how to play trumpet, I also had a long-standing love for baseball, which consumed most of my time as a youngster and through high school. As a senior in 1968, entering my third year of the baseball team, I decided I had to make a decision. My coach came up to me and said, we have double headers on Saturday. And I told him, well, I might not be able to do the double headers because I'm going to be playing trumpet in a new TV show, the Stan Gunn show. Well, at that time, baseball was out and trumpet music was in. So two of my fellow musicians in that particular group had just recently graduated from Western, and they encouraged me to go to Western and for my college years. So my girlfriend, Carol, at the time, and I packed our bags and off we went to WIU fall of 1968. And after 2 years of Western, Carol and I got married and lived in student housing. And that's when I became really focused and committed to music, the music major thing, and looking forward to having family and becoming a great band director. So that's my beginning.
That's a very strong beginning, and it pays off as you go through your career, as we will talk about. So your college experience, I know, was strong, but how did you get involved with my alma mater, Millikan University, in your career?
Well, my experience with that is maybe I'll tell you briefly about my experience at Western first, because I went to Western and I had a great experience there. Let me talk about that, and then I'll move on to how I did get involved with the Millikan University lab band. I had two brilliant band directors at Western. I had a jazz instructor named Lance Strickland. He was a brand new recent North Texas grad who took our average group of players at Western at the time, and he turned it into just a great ensemble with listening sessions, etc. And it was just really a great experience. He was really my first band mentor. And for example, he would show us how to teach, but most importantly, he showed us how to rehearse. He showed me how to rehearse a band. And as I watched him rehearse the group every day, I'm just getting this incredible lesson of how to do it. This section, why does this happen when we put this together? So all those questions that I had in my mind, like, how do you do any of this stuff? Well, in the jazz setting, he was able to do that for me. I also had the Chris Isa was my wind ensemble teacher. He did exactly the same thing. I was, instead of just playing trumpet and looking at the parts, I was so actively involved with watching them and seeing how they negotiated this section or listening to the flutes and the clarinets and how that all worked. And as I look back, I go, man, was I lucky to have these guys as my mentors during my Western days. So it was really great. Coming to Millikan, I was offered the job at Decatur High School right after graduation. So my wife and I, we moved to Decatur, and I was going to be the band director at Decatur, along with teaching assignment at several other grade schools, which I didn't really want to do. But in the long term, I found out that how important that was. Besides my teaching gig at Decatur, I continued my education at Millikan and met with Roger Schuler. And he was a great band leader and really a person at the forefront of the jazz movement. And the band was really terrific. I knew all about it. Once again, how lucky I was to see a master teacher work rehearsing the jazz band to excellence on a daily basis. I did get in the band and I did play lead in the band for 3 years. And it was just marvelous to see how he put things together. And once again, a different way than Lance did. And all of them, my teachers that I had, they all had a different approach. So as I look back, I put all those ways and methods of teaching, put them in my little packet over here in my little pouch, and put them all together and made my way of teaching. So it all turned out really pretty well. Schuler was able to secure State Department concert tours throughout Europe for many years with the lab band. And during my tenure at Millikan, I was fortunate enough to be a member of the State Department tour to Yugoslavia in 1973, communist country. I went over there by myself and came back by myself because I couldn't do the entire tour. And I had to take off of school, which was pretty rough because that was my first year of teaching. I had some good administrators that said, this experience will be good for you and good for us too, what you bring back. So I was able to go and leave for a whole week with the weekends, etc. So I was able to do about 10-day tour, which was really, really great. One interesting thing about my trip to Yugoslavia in January of 1973, I left the United States 6 days after my son was born. I'd never been out of the country before, never flown. I've only flown once in the US, so I was pretty nervous and conflicted about leaving at that particular time. But thanks to my mother-in-law and Carol's sister, Aunt Sue, they came to my rescue and stayed with Carol and helped me during my time away. But Milliken experience was quite amazing, and it led to a continuous friendship with best friends Doug Beach, Bud Harner, and Gary Johnson. That was my experience at Milliken. Should I continue with my third and last college experience?
You bet.
Okay, several years behind me at Decatur, I enrolled at U of I, University of Illinois, and entered the master's program just during the summer months. Played lead trumpet in the jazz band with another outstanding, nationally known jazz icon, John Garvey. And I had another great leader in jazz education. I played lead with him. On many mornings, we'd sit and talk at one of the places where we had coffee every morning. And just the experience of hanging out with John, listening to his stories, etc., about jazz, etc., was just invaluable. It was pretty weird because John came to U of I in the 1950s as a viola player. And during that time, he quickly shifted his interest in creating an underground jazz band. So he was really at the forefront of education. He turned that band into a great one. And besides Schuler, who secured a lot of State Department concert tours, Garvey did exactly the same thing. So those guys both had world connections with jazz, and I was one of their students. So it was really great. So Strickland and Schuler, and Garvey, all these guys, they were all three heavyweight jazz people in the forefront of jazz education in the late 60s and 70s. So they all influenced me greatly, and once again secured my commitment to jazz and jazz education.
Oh man, that brings back so many memories. I was involved with Roger Schuler. I was actually his teaching assistant, getting my master's degree when he came there. And that man was amazing. It was just incredible. And John Garvey, when I was in Champaign, we hung out all the time. He'd come over on Saturdays, and John could tell a story in the middle of a rehearsal about elephants or something and relate it back to the band. So you remember those days.
Right. So as you see, Dick, you and I have such a similar background. Started our careers in Central Illinois. The only thing is you moved away and did other really great things. I stayed here, but it's been all really, really great, and I'm glad that we did. Okay, next question.
Now we get into the meat of this interview, and that has to do with one of the most incredible band directors I have ever met in my long career. The magic you made at MacArthur High School in Decatur is legendary. You had tremendous marching bands, concert bands, and jazz bands. So give us some insight into those years and how you built and also maintained throughout the years that program.
Well, I guess it's like anything else. The more you do something, the more you have experience, and the more you hope that you're going to get better at it. So it's a long time going, learning how to do this, learning how to do that, experimenting with this. I had 6 years at Decatur High School before I even thought about going to MacArthur and changing. So during that time, I really experimented with lots and really thought about how to be a teacher, how to be a good teacher, and honest with kids and fair with them, and and just that personality thing of being able to, how do you connect with them? And I spent a lot of time thinking about that besides music. And as a result of that, that really helped me as I made the transition over to MacArthur, which we had a lot more students involved. And I was pleased to be able to move to that spot. It was really great. Uh, I asked Roger Suler whether I should stay in Decatur at one point and possibly move to one of the suburbs of Chicago. And his answer was to me that there was potential in Decatur, and if only someone would have enough patience to stay long enough to build a great program. So I did. And the 6 years at Stephen Decatur, as I said, kind of honed my teaching skills. And so when I came to MacArthur in 1978, the fall of 78, I was kind of raring to go, raring to really pull out my musical stuff inside me and to be able to teach. And fortunately, I had great success with the concert band, the marching band right away. And so the thing that I think other band directors that are looking, that are brand new to this whole thing, is you got to make a plan, and you got to think about where the emphasis is going to be. And always my emphasis was on the concert band. I want all of my students to be able to know that this is our real work. We're learning how to do legit stuff, just like I learned how to play as a teacher, or as a trumpet player from Ural Hoffman. Learn the classical stuff first, know the mechanics of the instruments that you're playing. And I got pretty proficient at being able to play all the instruments, which I thought was really pretty important. And so I put all that into the concert program, and I said, the marching band, the pep band, and the jazz program, all those things will feed off of that concert band. So the emphasis was always that. And I know that there are a lot of programs to where the jazz program is like, the jazz kids we're only going to do jazz. We don't want to do concert band. We don't want to do a marching band. Well, that never flew with me. So we always had to have that concert band thing going. And that made all the kids really respect, I think, their instrument, the music more. And when we got to the jazz band part of it, that was a little more fun for some, but it was a good thing. So that's how I approached that. The program, let's see, how should I say this? The first year that I was at MacArthur, I was overloaded with too much to do. I did the Roosevelt Middle School first thing jazz band in the morning. Second hour was 7th grade band, and third hour was 8th grade band. I went over to MacArthur. I was assigned a study hall for an hour. After that, I went and did music theory 1 and 2 at the same time during a period. And then I had 9th grade band, a concert band. Then I had my top wind symphony after that. Let's see, how many classes is that so far? And then after school, I did the jazz program. And I always had, during my entire time, I always had had two jazz bands going. Jazz 2 went right after school. Jazz 1 went after them. So my day was full, and by second semester, they took the study hall away, which was great. But I decided halfway through that year, I needed to get somebody else to do the middle school. So I had my third student teacher from Milliken was Steve Shepard. He was now teaching in Berwyn. So I called him up and said, Shep, you got to come back and teach the middle school, and we'll create a program. That was the beginning. So in 1979, it was my second year at MacArthur. Shep came back. He did the stuff at Roosevelt Middle School. He had 2 grade schools besides that. I had 2 grade schools that I did besides my work at MacArthur High School. And we talked about kids and program and who's going to play bass, who's going to play drums. We had a great connection. And during that time, we collaborated on everything. Our concerts, we would do concerts together. And for about a dozen years, we did that kind of independently, but we worked together. And we were developing things and every year it just got better and better and better. And then the tradition started. You know, all the kids come in and go, oh my gosh, the band, the concert band's so great, the jazz band's so great, et cetera, et cetera. So it just fed off itself. And if you do it properly and you do have control over the grade school, as I said earlier in this interview, I didn't want to do fifth and sixth grade band at all. But I found that that was the real secret to our program. Shep was a strong teacher at the elementary, and I felt like that was my favorite classes to teach. As a result of that, I bonded with all of those kids. Shep bonded with all his kids, and we all get together during concerts, and it was just a big family. And that's how it turned out to be, and that's why I think the cycle just continued. And then as kids would tell me when they come into the program, well, we feel a responsibility to, this is our time to continue this tradition. So it really did. It really did just fire up, and it was just really great. So that's how we got started.
Yeah, and boy, it really was amazing. Now, let me focus on jazz band for just a minute. As I said, a lot of the people are watching to get information about that. What did you do in terms of teaching improvisation?
Well, the improvisation thing, after we did the first 12 years of independent stuff, we were able to start team teaching part of the day. He would come over and help me with one. Say at one point we had 4 concert bands, and yeah, it became really a big program. And besides still teaching the grade schools, etc., but we started team teaching about halfway through our tenure there. And what I would do would be going to the middle school and teaching either 7th or 8th grade students, the ones who had really good musical IQ, and also had a feeling like Shep and I always talked about all the students. Well, who's the good alto player? Do you have a good alto player here? Yeah, he's interested in doing this improv. So I would go and start off with a simple theory class with these kids in the 7th and 8th grade, and we chose them. We chose the kids that we thought had the potential, and this was in 7th and 8th grade. So we're catching them early, and I would give them the basics of this and that and the other, and give them all kinds of other projects to play, and introduce them to the beginning part of improvisation. And as time went on, they became more and more interested in how to do all this. And we would I felt myself being the person who's the best resource person. This is what we should do. Listen to this video over here, do this and that and the other. It was all basic stuff from ground up. And of course, we emphasized listening, which was a huge part of our system. But that's how we started with the improv. And as the kids got into the high school and the higher level, they were into it. So it just escalated to where they wanted to learn more, and I provided all the resource stuff for them. And of course, we had a few guys at Millikan that helped out as well. There was a guy named Perry Rask, who was a saxophone teacher, still is, at Millikan, and he was quite helpful for a long time, helping me develop the saxophone section in our jazz 1 and jazz 2. But help with the improv as well. So that's how we did the improvisation. And maybe I could talk about a bottom line with the jazz program. You know, I was serious about the concept about every angle of our situation. And, you know, all of us banders, we have to carry so many hats to be able to make everything work. But some things with the jazz ensemble, I always made a list of kind of bottom line topics that the jazz band needs to be thinking about. And there's 6 that I put together. Of course, there's so many more. But these are the things that I think anybody who's young and thinking about how do I even start a program like this? Well, first of all, you got to figure out when there's going to be availability of time, whether it's before school, after school, evening, whatever, and something that's reasonable. You know, the kids of today, they got so many gosh darn things that they got to do, but you have to be mindful of their schedule and what they're doing. So that's probably number one. But of all the jazz stuff, it's just the traditional things, creating a culture in your band room that is really successful and warming, and where kids feel at ease. Just like I talked about Horace Sweet making me feel really at ease sitting next to this brilliant trumpet player, and here I am, a young kid. He made me feel so comfortable with that. I put that into my teaching all the time, knowing that I need to make them feel comfortable. Why? Then they can relate to me, etc. So those traditional things, creating that culture, is so important, and that's what is one that goes with the jazz program as well. Number two, in terms of jazz program and the success that I think that I had with all my students, is I really demanded them to all sit down and listen to music. And we would take that in rehearsals. I do this with the concert band, with the pep band, with the jazz program, and we would do that. Play the tune once. Next time we see them, we play it again, and I'd have them all listen very, very intently to their parts and watch. You know, kind of a way of rote teaching, which a lot of jazz kind of is. But I always refer back to a very important lesson that I wrote. I had read in a magazine once, but then I saw this jazz educator presented at our IMEA, Bob Watchich. Do you remember him, Dick?
Mm-hmm. I sure do.
Here's a little quote. Let me read this little quote to you. We music educators are encumbered with the dual responsibility of developing both performers and audiences. Given such a formidable task, it stands to reason that perceptive listening might perhaps be the most important skill that we can develop in our students. And that last part, it stands to reason that perceptive listening might be perhaps the most important skill that we can develop in our students. I've taken on that mantra as something that is very dear to me as a performer and a musician, but teaching them how to listen. You talked about a macro level of listening, a middle level of listening, and a macro level of listening. Let me tell you about a story of something I discovered when I was my first 2 years of college. We weren't married yet, and I stayed in the dorm, and I had a small record player. And for some reason, I fell in love with this Buddy Rich record. I happen to have it right here. This one. And this is the Buddy Rich Big Band. It was the first year it came out, and it was like 1968, 69, something like that. But let's look at this record. It is just, it's worn. And what I would do, and this was a skill that I took from the information that Washut was talking about, and I would put the record on and listen to a tune 4 or 5 times. And why I did this, I have no idea, other than I liked it, and I'm going, let me listen to this tune, but let me only listen to the bass part. Next time I'm going to listen again. I'm going to listen to the saxophones. Next time I'm going to listen to just the trumpet line, etc. Well, I found myself teaching myself how to look at a score, and I teach myself how to know and recognize this problem, that problem, this problem. And I was teaching myself this incredible skill, and it just kind of happened. And I continue that to this day. Then later on, you can sit back and go, okay, let's listen to singing for enjoyment instead of being so analytical of it. But it was a skill that I carry on today, and I try to pass that kind of thing along to all of our students. So that's number 2, listening skills. Number 3, for jazz people as well, with all the ensembles that I have taught through my 47 years now, is the most important thing for me is to find the right charts and the right music. And I spend way too much time, but I spent a whole lot of time really researching music. What's going to be good for that ninth grade jazz band? Well, there's a few choices here. Where do I start? You just dig in and start doing it. What's going to be good for my top band? Can they even do this? So always thinking about, is this going to work? I don't know. So through the years of experience, I've been able to hone that skill, especially with the municipal band that I teach. Being able to teach and conduct is really picking music that's going to fit and know that it's stuff that, I like this. Now I want to be able to teach the heck out of this, and I want to get my kids turned on to this. That whole thing of doing that process is so essential for having a great program, as your enthusiasm, honest enthusiasm to move forward with things, but having reasonable goals and having the right music. So taking a lot of time and not just going through the alphabet. Okay, I'll get to this year, I'll buy a bunch of jazz charts that start with A or whatever, kind of a dumb way to do it. So don't do that. Anyway, right charts, very important. Number 4, in my thinking, you need to make sure that you don't waste time in rehearsal. And that's rehearsal, being able to have a great rehearsal every day. And being able to be able to rehearse a band well. As you know, early on, I talked about my mentors, how I sat and just didn't play my trumpet part. I was really watching them and how they became a teacher. How did they bring that to the forefront? How did they make it interesting for all the people in the band to want to do good? So all those skills that I learned early on, I put it into all the ensembles that I taught for all those years, and I still do with the municipal band. So being able to not waste time, be honest in rehearsal, and rehearse the daylights out of things. Stop, fix this. This is not right. And once you do that, you set that way of doing it. They'll accept it and they'll want that. They want to get better. And instead of saying, "Well, it sounds pretty good today. Maybe next time we'll play through it again and it'll get better." That's not rehearsing a band. Being able to sit and say, "This is not good here. Let's sing some parts." Singing parts, and they get used to that style of teaching and style of learning, and it becomes easy because all of a sudden they have great success. And isn't that the bottom line anyway? You bet it is. And my number 5 of 6 things that I think that are important with jazz education, making sure you draw the difference between your concert playing, which is number 1, and with the jazz playing and jazz band charts, to be just a little, it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive and to be able to go with that. But the most important thing is the feel and the time, and always talking about the time. Here's the time here. All right, everybody settle in. Shut your eyes. Do this. Oh, it's do that. Fool around with that. Play games with that sort of thing. But what you're really doing is you're talking about time and feel. That's 85% of a band that sounds good, high school band or junior high band or pro band. Does it feel good? Yeah. And the more you emphasize that to kids with enthusiasm, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. And man, this is fun. Let's do more. And it does. Everything accumulates, the same thing. Then the last part, obviously, is the improvisation. Then through the years, the kids that I have that did all the great improvisation, there were a few each year that were really talented. And it's a long process to get good at it. And so with me being able to have all my years, starting 7th and 8th grade, identifying those few students who have this and have this going on to start with, and then their skills. So and in terms of having everybody do improvisation, I didn't do a lot of that. So I just identified the students who had that thinking. That as somebody who's a senior in high school says, you know, I'm going to play a solo. Great. You know, they say their buddy's doing it. Great. You know, we'll give them some help, etc. Oh, one other thing about improvisation, and I used to do this quite a bit with everybody, and that is give them a solo to play that's written out. Have them play that when you're in junior high school, middle school. Have them stand up and have success instead of have them stand up and fool around and, oh, I'm doing improvisation. You know, you want to make them have success with that to where it feels good and they're playing, and now they get turned on to where I want to go to the next step. And it does work. So that's my little spiel on improvisation and what you want to do with your jazz program. Of course, it's much more involved than what I just talked about, but it's daily being very consistent about your honesty about I love this music that I present. But coming back to you, man, you got to have charts that are going to be playable by kids so they can have success with the limited amount of rehearsal time that you have. But you got to be able to have pieces that you really like, and that way you can teach your heart out, and it just works.
Well, there's a master class by a master teacher, and I'm telling you, he made it happen. It's just so good to see you, Jim, and I want to continue to talk just a little bit about the municipal band and how long you've been involved in that, and tell us that story.
Well, when I went to MacArthur High School, the one of my students, his father was leading the band, Jim Casey, and he had done it it was his second year, and he was stepping down the following year. So in the middle of my first year at MacArthur High School, where I'm going back and forth to U of I for my master's program, and you know I'm playing another rock band and every gig I can find, etc. I found that he came up to me and said, "I'm retiring next year, and would you be interested in doing the mini band?" I'm going, I don't know about that. Anyway, I thought about it. I said, "Okay, I'll give this a try." So I started that, and that was in 1979. I'm still doing it, and and did I have a recollection that I would be doing that at that time and keep it going? Of course not. But I started and was pretty good at it at the beginning, but as time went on, I got better and better and better. And and now I find myself, I'm able to buy some good music every year. And boy, it seems like the level of writers and great concert band music and jazz band music, it's just got so much better and better and better. And I tell you what, Dick, through this is coming up to my 47th year doing this. I still love it. And because I still have a really good band. I have a really good band. Instrumentation, for the most part, is really pretty consistent and good. So we can play every grade 4 chart out there. And I have conducted. I look at the scores. I have all the scores right over here in my closet, right over here, all of them. So I do all my work in this small little room that I have here. But putting it together. But it's just a thrill to be able to sit, and different than school. You know, you get in front, you have a 2-hour rehearsal, and you have 2 hours of music to get through. So we don't play through everything rehearsed. We sight read 2 or 3 marches possibly every show. But our schedule is just during the summer months, and we have a rehearsal on Tuesday, concert on Sunday and Monday, and the same music, but one is a shorter concert than the other. Then we have this great place in Decatur called the Devon Amphitheater. And the Devon Amphitheater is right on the lake. It's about 4 years old at this point. It is like one of the best in the country. It's amazing. And we can play several concerts there every year. So that's another big perk. The sound is fantastic and it's just really great. But I think I conducted most grade 4 pieces ever written for a concert band. Years. We have a great librarian, and so it keeps me on my toes. A lot of score study, but every week we do a brand new show, and so every week we go through. I mean, I have a stack of music, of scores probably this high from just this past season. And every year it's that many of scores. And you know, I mark them all up. They all have my signature on them, what year we planted, etc. But it's been a fun game, and I hope to make that 50 mark here in 4 years. So we'll see what happens.
Wow, that's cool. Well, knowing you personally as I do, let me ask you to talk about your son Brian and the path that his musical career has taken.
Yeah, well, he's making a living in music as a performer. Wait a minute, how wild is that? That's pretty crazy that that's taken place. But as I think any performer that has success has a lot of things going on. First of all, they have to be pretty lucky. They've got to be at the right place at the right time. They've got to have connections, and they have to have a lot of luck to make things happen. But most importantly, they got to have the goods. They got to be able to, hey, this guy is really, he's got the goods. He knows how to do this, that, and the other. You know, he was one that started on a small Macintosh computer years ago when he was in 8th grade. He had a paper route for 1 year. He took every bit of that money and bought his own computer, and took one lesson from a friend of mine that was starting to do all this MIDI stuff, and he just took to it like crazy. So he started creating music all by himself, and you know, his first album was all just him. It was I think he had a drummer on one chart, etc. But now he's got, you know, 25 CDs out there, something like that, and he's been a real smooth jazz big time dude for quite a long while. And I don't know if you know this, but in 19, let's see, what year was it? It was 20, 19, anyway, years ago, I played in the band with him for 5 years. And during that 5 years, I was still teaching. I would get on a plane. I would leave my house on a Friday. I had a lot of sick days, so I was able to take a lot of Fridays off. I would take Friday off and leave at 3 in the morning, go up to Bloomington, fly to New York City, play a gig at one of the big places in New York City, and then the next night fly down to Florida and play, and then the next night I would fly back home. I did that for I think the years were 2003 to 2008, and we played at all the major market cities, and I played over 300 big shows with him. It's smooth jazz music, right? But remember, these things, the book was really hard. I mean, it was really a challenging trumpet book. There's only one trumpet player, and he's a trombone player, which is a really big part, and he always carries a great tenor player. And so we were able to do that. And the last few times that I played, we did the opening act for Barry Manilow, did a whole bunch of those. I did a tour of Japan in October 2009. My last time with him was I did a tour of the UK during 2011. And then he hired a real LA trumpet player to fill in my shoes. So, in any event, that was a great experience. He's doing well. He's got these smooth jazz. I remember him talking when he first started. He said, "One of these days, I'm going to have a big festival of all my friends, Rick Braun, Chris Bodie, all these players, Dave Koz, all these players, and we're going to all come here, and all of our fans are going to come." And lo and behold, he did it. The Jazz Getaways in Napa and Chicago. He's even looking at one to do in Italy, and so he's a lucky guy in the right place, right time. You got the goods, and you have the enthusiasm to make things happen. So he's a very lucky guy.
Well, he had a great father and a great teacher. And Jim, I can't begin to tell you how important this interview is. And thank you for sharing all of this information. Now, what are you doing personally as you move forward? What's coming up in the on the horizon for you?
Well, I am in my mid 70s, and I do have a secret weapon, though, and that is my lifetime partner, Carol. And we have been together since we were both 17 years old, and that has now been the focus of what we do. We travel a lot. We're fortunate enough to have things that where we can afford to do it, and so we've been traveling to Europe quite a few times here. Got another one planned here in April, but we're out quite a bit. So uh, having that as a big focus at this point is great. My Muni Band season is 11 to 12 weeks every year, but all year I'm thinking about listening to music and trying to prepare for that. So I'm going to continue to do that. My big band has 3 to 4 gigs a year. Used to be 10 to 12, but now it's down to that. So little bit less. And so still involved with all that. And the only thing that I don't miss, and that is when I first started teaching, I was teaching sometimes 8 and 9 periods a day, and they get their money's worth out of teachers like me who stayed. And we and when you go into either a music theory class or fifth grade band class or the Top Wind Symphony or the Muni Band, you still have this. You have to have the same enthusiasm to make it happen. Otherwise they won't sit up. You have the enthusiasm. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, let's go. And then it works. That's when music works.
Jim Culbertson, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And it's just so good to see you again. You look great. Continue on, my friend.
Okay, Dick, it's been a pleasure, and you look great. And once again, congratulations to you for continuing your work with music and in the Midwest and in the Jazz Educator. You've been a real stellar star for a long, long time. So, congrats to you.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, I'll reiterate that. Thank you for your time and the effort. And as Dick described it a couple of minutes ago, what a clinic we just got on how to operate a successful program. Thank you.
Thank you.
To our viewers, thanks for watching. We hope you gained some valuable insights from the interview. Please view our other interviews in the series to learn more about the interviewees and their contributions to music education.